First, the Department of Justice is the most corrupt in history, even when Donald Trump says that Watergate was a hoax. The last criminal president was a hoax. The Department of Justice is not only corrupt, but it's unraveling before our very eyes. We've got all sorts of indictments being pushed through the sausage grinder by operators like Lindsay Halligan who don't know what they're doing, don't know how to spell, don't know the difference between words in a press release, get locations wrong in indictments, turn in 2 indictments to a magistrate judge when you can only have one. You know, mistakes like that as we look at indictments for hire, indictments for vengeance, as Donald Trump makes good on his promise or threat that he would be the chief legal officer in America. Evidence is already leaked out by way of the defense about Letitia James, about James Comey's cases, showing that they are not worth the paper the indictments are written on, that each of them has substantive major defenses to show no criminal intent and no wrongful conduct about their respective cases, and motions to dismiss for prosecutorial abuse, which is being heaped on them even as we speak. And we pull it all together in an episode of Legal AF, the podcast, proud to report the #1 law and politics podcast on YouTube rankings week after week. And it's all because of you. And here's a clip of our most recent analysis. Department of Justice has been completely wrecked by Donald Trump, as we know. Federal judges, just to put a high level point on it, federal judges, magistrate judges are all bracing themselves for this abuse of power, whether it's in Illinois with 2 separate federal judges that we're going to talk about today, who both issued back-to-back temporary restraining orders, one citing the founding fathers and Alexander Hamilton, whether it's Judge Immergut in Portland, Oregon, whether it is magistrate judges in D.C. who are rejecting indictments that are being presented to them, claiming that the Department of Justice is doing end runs around the Department of Justice. You've got a completely madhouse happening at the Department of Justice. The tone from the top, which is set by the on paper Attorney General, because we know the Attorney General is Donald Trump, but the on paper one, Pam Bondi, she of blind ambition, makes all sorts of crazy statements and clutches at her pearls during a Senate Oversight Committee meeting and effectively lies to them about the state of affairs with certain investigations involving Tom Homan, the border czar, and $50,000 bribery, involving the Epstein files, involving James Comey. She just can't get her facts straight. And at the same time, you've got the mask is now slipping, or has been slipping, in the Trump administration. And its leaders like Stephen Miller are saying out loud crazy shit. That's a legal term. Like the president has plenary power, plenary authority, meaning he has unassailable, judicial reviewable power over many of the things they're doing, whether it's blowing up ships in the Caribbean, where J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, writes, "I don't give a shit," literally. Cover your children's ears here, folks, about whether that violated international law. You've got Stephen Miller, who had a Westworld moment where he glitched on national television when he started talking about plenary power, and talks about the fact that they are going to use the military and the power and hardball tactics like we've never seen before to quote unquote crush dissent. And then the reality, Ben, is that things like the cosplay National Guard takeover, which is going to cost the American people well north of $1 billion, already $200 million for DC alone. And what are they doing? They're not crushing Antifa. They're not crushing the radical left or dissent. They're picking up garbage. They're doing local police work. They're guarding federal buildings in which there's people in chicken suits and frog suits doing First Amendment protests. Or they're pepper balling members of the clergy and journalists. And so this is all coming to a head and kind of filtering through the federal courts as the Department of Justice decides that the best use of their time in the face of bad news reports is to indict using primarily people who are unqualified and are risking their bar license. So we've got John Bolton, we've got Letitia James, and we got James Comey. So the Comey arraignment went terrible. I mean, it could not have James Comey and his fighting defense lawyer Pat Fitzgerald could not have scripted a better outcome than what happened before Judge Nachmanoff, a Biden appointee, at the arraignment. No perp walk. You had Lindsay Halligan, who people in the room reported was literally rocking back and forth in her chair, as I've joked, getting ready to go into the fetal position, not saying anything. She was mute. She just nodded her head a lot as she sent up two North Carolina prosecutors this judge has never seen before and are not yet sworn in or hadn't been into the Eastern District of Virginia to make arguments about the case. Pat Fitzgerald saw that he outmatched them and took full advantage of it. Judge, we're moving on motion for selective prosecution because this kind of perjury, these kind of statements don't get prosecuted in this district. Vindictive prosecution, this is all about Donald Trump trying to get back at James Comey for not doing his bidding when he was an FBI director, for sending information to the papers about his dismissal, for writing books against Donald Trump, plain and simple. And we're also going to be moving against Lindsay Halligan because we think she's illegally appointed under the various ways you can make it acting interim or interim U.S. attorney, to which the lawyers for the Department of Justice, to the extent they could get a word in edgewise, was arguing for, we can't go to trial in January, which is 3 months from now, because there's national security and top secret things and things we have to put through. And the judge was like, this looks like a relatively simple case. You've alleged there was one, from what I can see, you've alleged there was one leak maybe to the Washington Post, and we're going to trial Jan 5, which puts the defense, it strengthens their hand. And as you know, because the government has an obligation to turn over all exculpatory things that tend to prove somebody's innocence and all of the files to the defense. For instance, John Durham, the former special prosecutor who spent 4 years looking at things like James Comey, according to leaks, told the prosecutors, the career prosecutors in the office, don't indict James Comey because there's no evidence that he committed any perjury. I looked at it. He's going to be a witness for the defense if this case even gets that far. And I don't think it gets that far. I think this thing is on complete life support at this point. And I don't think this was the purpose of Donald Trump. He knows he's not going to get a conviction of James Comey. He just wants the headline to be that he indicted James Comey for perjury. And I don't think Lindsay Halligan really believes she's ever going to be the full-time U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. That's not her job. Her job right now is to get indictments, including ones apparently her boss didn't know about when it came to Letitia James, and the confirmation process for the permanent position be damned. So that's the Comey thing. I don't know if you want me to turn to Letitia James before Bolton.
Yeah, I mean, with Comey, the prosecution was not ready to even go to trial. I mean, when you get that indictment, you got to be ready for a speedy trial and be ready immediately. So the fact that they're the ones saying we've got to push this back, that's unheard of. The fact that Fitzgerald, the lawyer for Comey, said we have no clue who the individuals are that the government, which means they've talked to them. It means that Comey's lawyer probably has already spoken to the lawyers of who they believe person 1 and 3 could possibly even be, because these individuals like Andy McCabe and others had already said during an inspector general's investigation, we were not authorized by Comey.
Wait. Well, one thing before, don't move off that. The two witnesses that could be, McCabe has said there's only two people that authorize leaks. And that's me and Comey. And I authorized it to the Washington Post. So there goes the perjury charge. And Professor Richman from Colombia, who was a special employee for the Department of Justice, for the FBI, and a good friend of Comey who worked with him in the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office. He said he was interviewed and he told them, I was not authorized to leak to the Washington Post, and I did not leak to the Washington Post. So you have a perjury matchup problem here in the indictment because the two lead witnesses have said either I did it or I didn't do it, and that leaves Comey off the hook. This is all going to be part of that motion practice. Welcome back. If you enjoyed that, you're going to love the full-length version of the podcast. We do 4 or 5 topics like that Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. If you're on the Midas Touch Network, hit the free subscribe button. If you're on Legal AF, do the exact same thing. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so that you don't have to. I'm Michael Popak. I do Midas Touch. I do Legal AF. I do a podcast called The Intersection. And I'm working 24/7 really for you. If you like what we're doing, subscribe on Legal AF, become part of the ecosystem. And the cherry on top, the membership card for Legal AF is if you become a Legal AF Substack member and a paid member at that. So if you want to help us, help keep the podcast, the granddaddy, the grandpappy of them all, 5 years in the making, doing as well as it's been doing. We could use a little love on the audio side, on the Apple side, on the Spotify side to keep us up there in the top 50 of all shows and news. And we could continue your love here on YouTube, watching, sending off, inviting people, continuing to grow our audience. I think we just hit number 21, our highest ranking on YouTube just last week. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.